Hey, welcome to Life After Nursing School. I'm your host, Caroline Dana, aka Nurse Coach Caroline, and I'm here to help you, the new nurse, thrive in your career. As a former nurse recruiter, nurse manager, and now your personal new nurse career coach, I'm obsessed with making sure you don't just survive your first couple of years at the bedside. I want you to absolutely rock them. From the challenges to the triumphs, I'll be right here with you, giving you the real-world advice and support that you need to shine. Whether you're in nursing school getting ready for life after, or you're already out there in nurse life feeling overwhelmed or even questioning your confidence, I've got your back. I'll be sharing tips, tricks, resources, and strategies that are just for you. We'll dive into everything from landing that dream nursing job to slaying imposter syndrome, and most importantly, how to keep that spark alive and stay the vibrant and amazing nurse that you are. So if you're ready to tackle the things nursing school did not cover, like how to build a career, trust yourself, and keep your passion strong, then get comfortable because we are about to dive in and make nurse life the best life. Welcome to the Life After Nursing School podcast. If you're new here, this is a place where you can get tangible career advice, new nurse support, insights into different specialties, and tips on how to level up not just your career, but also your life. Today's episode is juicy, and that's because it's for the nurse out there feeling stuck or unhappy. If you are second guessing your career choices or feeling like you can't possibly work another shift on your current unit, then this episode is exactly for you. So before you update your resume, before you text your friend, I'm quitting, before you spiral about all of your life choices, let's just take a beat and let's talk. You may think that you're burnt out, but actually it may be the opposite. You may have simply outgrown the room that you're in. So let's review burnout first. What does burnout actually look like? Burnout doesn't usually start with hating your job. It actually starts with small compromises that you probably barely notice. And burnout is rarely one big dramatic event. So it's not the result of a massive fight with a coworker or a poor performance review. It's actually cumulative, and it happens over time, slowly, and often quietly. A big contribution to burnout are micro moral injuries. We are taught in nursing school that patient safety is our number one priority. But once you start practicing as a nurse, you quickly realize that often we're forced to do things that we don't think are actually in the best interest of our patients. Like discharging someone when we know they aren't ready to leave the hospital. But you know what? The hospital is in surge and we need that bed for someone else who may be sicker. Or maybe it's the lack of time that we actually have to sit and connect with our patients. Or we're told to prioritize things like updating the patient whiteboard when we truly feel that's not a priority right now. You slowly realize that the reality and pressures of healthcare require us to place our own values aside. It's a hard realization, but when you feel morally stretched or that your work is in misalignment with your own morals and your own values, the effects take their toll quietly, but so deeply. In addition to micro moral injuries, chronic overextension is a huge burnout contributor. This looks a little bit more obvious than the micro moral injuries, and it is basically saying yes over and over again in the workplace. Maybe we are saying yes to extra shifts. Maybe we're saying yes to precepting or orienting a new hire. Maybe we're saying yes to being charge nurse. Maybe we're asked to be on committees, and of course we say yes. And we say yes because we're capable. We say yes to these things because yes, we are capable. However, capacity and capability are not the same. When your nervous system never resets, your baseline becomes survival mode and you start living in that fight or flight state. Now, our next contributor to burnout is a feeling of lack of control. This one is huge because it leads to feeling powerless and undervalued, and simply that our voices don't matter. Burnout truly skyrockets when you have no say in the matter. You can't influence change. You feel unheard. You're told to focus on metrics over meaning. And the last major contributor to burnout is huge, and that is our strong attachment to our nursing identity. Nurses often attach identity to being the dependable one. I'm the strong one. I can handle it. My patients need me. When your entire identity is wrapped up in being needed, rest feels selfish, and that's dangerous territory. So as a recap, burnout often begins with micro moral injuries, those small but repeated moments when we are asked to do things that don't sit right with us. Over time, constantly working in misalignment with our values leaves us morally exhausted. At the same time, many of us are operating in a state of chronic physical overexhaustion. We say yes more than we should, yes to extra shifts, yes to more responsibilities, yes to being the strong one, and slowly our nervous system gets stuck in that fight or flight state. Exhaustion becomes our baseline. And as this continues, we may start to feel undervalued and unheard. We have little say in our practice, little control over our schedule, and little influence over decisions that directly affect our patients. And control matters. When we feel in control as humans, we feel safe. When we lose that, instability sets in. And lastly, if we over-identify with our nursing title, we keep showing up for everyone else while simply ignoring ourselves. We become so attached to being needed that we forget to ask what we need. And that's how burnout quietly builds. So how does burnout actually feel? How do we know if what we are experiencing is not just a bad day or a bad week or maybe even a season in our life or our career, but actually burnout? Well, emotional signs are irritability, cynicism, detachment from patients, feeling numb instead of compassionate, dreading shifts days in advance, and some physical signs are headaches, GI issues, sleep disruption, constant fatigue, even after days off, getting sick more often, behavioral signs, withdrawing from coworkers, short patience at home, doom scrolling, fantasizing about quitting entirely, overworking to prove something, and the sneaky sign and the biggest red flag of all is indifference. When you stop caring completely. And that's the scariest sign. I have definitely experienced burnout in my nursing career. And I think the biggest time I experienced it was when I was a nurse manager of a COVID med-surg behavioral health inpatient unit. The job was so demanding. I would attend meetings almost every single day with hospital leadership, and they had an idea of what we should be prioritizing and what staff should be prioritizing, and then they would require the managers to roll out that set of priorities and ensure that they were being maintained by the staff. Now, at the same time, I would leave those meetings, go directly to my unit where I would hear firsthand from my nurses what their true struggles were and the things that we actually needed to work on in order to do our jobs well and had to do with safety for our patients. And that was a huge moral struggle for me. I remember calling my mom in tears because I was told that my unit would be rolling out this very big initiative and I simply did not agree with it, but I had no option. I had to say yes, and I had to make it work. And the majority of the work related to that initiative fell on my lap. And this was probably the most damaging thing to my well-being. Having to work on a project that was so cumbersome and labor intensive and encourage my staff to participate and basically tell them that this thing would be great for us when I knew in my heart this was an absolute waste of time. The hours for that job were very long, and I had a young family at the time too, and actually even gave birth to my third child while in that role. And the job started to infiltrate my life outside of work hours. And every vacation I took, I had twice as much work waiting for me when I got back. I then hated taking time off because I knew returning would be so stressful and it would take me weeks to get back on track. I was called all the time because of staffing issues, and then I would have to get on the phone with central staffing and basically fight or share my case as to why I needed more staff on my unit for that particular shift. And it was so exhausting. I was very short with the people that I love most in my life, and I really found that I was flying by the seat of my pants. I was always in a rush, always forgetting things like an appointment, a theme day at my kids' school, maybe even my lunch, and I stopped finding any joy in my hobbies, like reading and running and being outside and just being with my family. I also noticed that I started to daydream every single commute to work and from work about my dream job and my dream life. I pictured in my head slow mornings with my kids, getting them up for school, enjoying a cup of coffee in my pajamas, and heading out to the bus stop with my kids, and then returning inside and working on my computer at home for a few hours. I pictured making all of my kids' after school activities and being a present mom. Fast forward 2 years, and I actually pivoted back to recruitment and worked from home. I swear I was actually manifesting my dream job at the time, and I had no idea that I was. And if you're interested in manifestation or what that actually looked like, I did record an episode 26, how I accidentally manifested my dream nursing career. So check out that episode if that resonates with you. Now, having said all of that, what I was experiencing in the role of nurse manager was burnout. It got to a point where I realized that my ideas to make my own unit and staff morale and workplace better didn't matter. The leadership team above me had their own agenda, and I had to follow it. I started to think to myself, I can't live like this every day. I felt honestly like I was in prison or trapped. I loved my staff, and I actually really enjoyed different parts of my job, but overall it was an unsustainable position for me. What is important to know is that if I were to leave that manager job for another manager position, even if it was at a different hospital, my burnout symptoms would follow. Burnout follows you, especially if you are just going from one position to a very similar environment or like position. So you may be listening to this thinking, yes, some of this can relate, but maybe not all of it. Well, there is another option, my friend, and that might be that you've simply outgrown your environment. So now let's talk about what outgrowing looks like. You're likely competent and comfortable. You may even be bored at work. You're mentoring more than learning. You can pretty much predict your entire shift. You feel a quiet, there's more for me feeling. You crave exposure to something new. You may even feel restless. You find you are tired of repeated struggles on the job, right? The same difficult coworkers or the constant workflow challenges, like where in the world is the darn bladder scanner? Those things just get under your skin and irritate you. The little things are getting to you because you may just simply feel so over it. Okay, so I have had an experience where I have felt like it was time to move on because I had outgrown my environment, and I want to share that story with you. And I also want to add that I am not saying I knew everything in that role and it was time to move on. When you start as a nurse or even in a new environment, the learning curve initially is so steep. There's so much to learn that honestly it feels extremely overwhelming. But as time goes on, the learning curve actually levels out and you find that there's not too much you haven't seen before or dealt with. And I want to now take you back to my first year as a new grad nurse. I started my nursing career on a med-surg unit, but it was mostly surgical. And most of these surgeries were usually elective and they were abdominal and chest surgeries. You may know this or you may not, but most surgeries follow a clinical pathway. So based on the surgery that your patient had, you sort of knew how many days they would be admitted and what day they were expected to do certain things, like advance their diet or get out of bed and walk, and maybe even pass gas and have a bowel movement. So about 8 months in or so, I found that I was starting to dread work. Not because of the actual job, but I didn't want to go take care of the same patients I just had yesterday. I wanted something new. I wanted to see variety in different things. I also found that when my patient had a complication post-surgery and deviated from that pathway, I got excited. And I know that sounds a bit dark, maybe even malicious, maybe even evil. And it simply wasn't that. It wasn't that I wanted my patient to do poorly. It was that this patient was off the pathway and now in uncharted territory, okay? When this happens, it becomes the nurse's job to identify why this patient was not progressing and to be able to treat them based on their current condition. In other words, it requires more critical thinking, more clinical assessment skills, and to me, more excitement. This was a big red flag that it was time for me to move on to a new specialty. I also had less patience and tolerance for things like difficult coworkers and repeated workflow disruptions. It was simply time for a new environment with new difficult coworkers and new workflow problems. No work environment is perfect, but I knew I needed a change, good or bad. And that's when I went to the ER. Okay, now that we talked about being burnt out versus outgrowing your current environment, I want to talk about when not to leave your job. Being a nurse means we work in emotionally high environments. I have one rule of thumb to follow when it comes to quitting, and that is you aren't allowed to quit on a losing day. You can quit, but it has to be a day where you gave great patient care. You had a good shift. You feel genuinely content, maybe even happy. When we quit on a losing day, we are acting out of emotion. We often are letting our feelings dictate our actions. And when we quit on a good day, we know that it is a well thought out decision. We know we are ready for that next chapter. So if we aren't allowed to quit on a losing day, then that means we aren't quitting because of one bad shift, even if it was the worst of all time. We aren't quitting because we had a brutal altercation with a coworker that we know we're going to have to work with again in the near future. We're not going to quit just because we experienced our first patient death. We're not going to quit because we had a terrible stretch of back-to-back shifts or even a rough performance review from our manager. Instead, I encourage you to do the following before making a decision. Wait 2 weeks. Let the dust settle. Let your logical sense catch up to your emotions. Give yourself time to reflect on your current state. It's important too that we get sleep. Our job is exhausting, especially if we are working off shift and not getting enough sleep to be competent. So we need enough sleep to make a logical, rational decision. Also, talk to someone. A coworker, maybe EAP, which is your employee assistance program, your mom, your trusted friend, a therapist. Talk to someone because many times talking about it with someone helps us get perspective that we would not have seen ourselves. Also, what may help if you're feeling stuck is journaling. If you've never journaled, then you may be surprised by the things that come out on paper. It's a great way to dig deeper into your subconscious, and it will give you clarity on what is truly bothering you and what you actually want out of your career and your daily life. Now, if we decide that this is a blip or a one-off event and that we are overall content in our current job, then stay. Stay until it no longer serves you. If the feeling persists for months, then this is where we need to reevaluate. Now, I want to share some journaling prompts just to help you, again, if you're feeling stuck. I will also add them in my show notes for reference, okay? Here they are. Am I tired or uninspired? If fear wasn't a factor, would I stay? Do I feel expanded or contracted imagining another year here? What skill am I craving to learn next? Okay, now before we end this episode, I want to add a pro tip. I recommend, no matter how you are feeling, to always be resume ready, meaning every few months, update your resume so when the perfect opportunity arises, you are ready for it. Being resume ready means that you won't be caught off guard when your dream job is posted online, and you won't be slapping together a resume so that you can apply for this job. Instead, we want your resume to be polished and perfect for the next version of you. Now, if you got to the end of this episode and you've decided, all right, Caroline, it's actually time for me to move on, next week, I'm walking you through exactly how to leave your job strategically. So exciting, I know. Okay, I appreciate you being here, listening to me, and also to the show. If you would be so gracious to leave a rating or review on the Life After Nursing School podcast, it would honestly make my day. All right, as always, friend, I have one hand for me and the other for you. Signing off. Well, that's it for today's episode of Life After Nursing School. I hope you feel more confident and ready to tackle the challenges that come with starting your nursing career. Remember, the first year or two might not be easy, but with the right mindset, you can overcome anything. If you found value in today's episode, I'd love for you to hit that subscribe button so you never miss a future episode. Also, please consider leaving a review on your favorite podcast platform. It helps so much in reaching other new nurses like you. Thanks for listening, and remember, you've got this. Take care and see you next time.